Hey.
Thanks for doing a super dangerous spacewalk to save my life. That was pretty cool.
No worries. Cerritos strong, right?
Totally.
Sorry I've been a jerk all year. I kinda thought you hated me.
Yeah, I think when I like people, I maybe go out of my way to force some distance, so that's on me.
So what I'm taking away from that was that you like me?
No, shut up. Come on.
Congrats, Brad. You were a real hero today.
Thanks, but anyone would have done the same.
Whoa, check out Mr. Humble Confidence. Where'd you come from?
I guess when you almost drown in whale pee, it makes you not sweat the small stuff anymore, you know?
Oh, Mom noticed the decorations, by the way.
What? Did she know it was me?
She probably assumes it was children, actually.
Captain, I drew the banners.
Huh, I like that guy.
Right? He's great.
Welcome, everyone, to Deep Space Pride, a gay Star Trek podcast. I am Johnson, one of your hosts, and with me is Mike, my co-host. Hi, Mike. How are you doing today?
I am good, Johnson. How are you today?
I'm doing all right. It's another week, another dollar. Here we go, making money, trying to survive, et cetera, et cetera. So, yeah, I think overall I'm doing good. It's been a busy week. There's been a lot going on. I've been social. Work has been going. I think things are all right. What about you?
As we joked earlier on Slack,
I was saying that... What did I say? Shoot.
I don't know.
It's been a long afternoon. I was saying that, drowning is fine, right? This is the state. This is the state of life.
It is a state of drowning is a state of being, and I have come to accept that.
Yes.
It is. Yes. But you've also been having a busy week.
Yeah.
You've been doing your marathon training.
Yep.
Work's busy.
Work is really busy. Yeah. Marathon training. Half marathon training.
Mm-hmm.
Real marathon training will start sometime next year.
Half marathon training.
Half marathon. I took the afternoon off. So
how nice.
I know, right?
You took a half day?
I took a half day because we had a vet visit for Hamish, his first.
Oh, that's right.
So, yeah.
You said he was a bit of a nightmare yesterday, though.
Yeah, so which was kind of funny because both the vet assistant and the vet both said, "Oh, how's it going?" Because they knew that we had Hamish for 2 weeks. And we paused dramatically and they both laughed. And I was like, one day like today, he was chill and really easygoing and everything. And then yesterday he was like a demon child. So yes, it was, yesterday was a little hairy at times. The highlight, actually not really the highlight, but the most stressful part was when I went inside for a moment to dispose of his fecal matter, and I walked back to the doorway, and he was 90% under the bottom metal step. Right. And I was like, so our backyard steps are made of metal, and so he was
basically crawling into like the crawl space underneath the steps, right?
Yes, and I literally,
if he got stuck in there, that would be a problem.
Yeah, no, would have to call like the fire department or something, and we would have no back steps anymore because they would have to have torn them apart to get our poor puppy out. So, so that was exciting. So I yelled his name, and he pulled himself out. Thankfully,
he did.
Yeah, but we had a little talking to after that. And
are you gonna block it off?
We are, yeah, we have to. I mean, he's getting bigger. So we found out he's gained 2.5 pounds in the 2 weeks that we've had him.
Uh-huh.
So, and he's 16 weeks old this week. So, He got a bunch of his shots and was really good, but yeah, I mean, eventually he'll be too big, but he's still crafty enough to do things like that. So,
Right.
yeah, it was a very freak out moment for me yesterday.
That'd been really annoying if he got stuck underneath.
Yeah, I mean, it would absolutely have fire people coming through fire people coming through, traipsing through the whole apartment to go out back to basically bring their big metal things and cut our stairs to pieces. Yeah, that would have been fantastic.
That would have been stressful.
But fortunately, he pulled himself back out, and all was well. But
good job not having him go the other way, like go more in.
Oh gosh, yeah, that would have been horrible. So yeah, but today he was great at the vet, got a bunch of shots, and in 5 days he'll be able to join the real world.
Yeah, that's exciting.
Yeah, so
I have a lot to experience.
Yeah, so I had to carry. Luckily, the vet is right around the corner, which was extremely helpful. But I had to carry him, lug him around,
like in a carrying thing, like a dog.
No,
carry?
I carried him carried him, physically held him as I walked down the street.
Oh wow, okay.
Because he's not protected against anything that's on the ground,
right.
Or other dogs, which you pass like 3 or 4 other dogs, so he can't really interact with other dogs yet. So yeah, but he's good. So all went well, and we're going back in 2 weeks for the next round of shots, and then and then he'll. I think the first other dogs he's gonna meet are my sister's dogs up in Massachusetts when we go.
What? What do you mean? Really?
Well, I mean, we'll walk him, and I guess he'll meet some other dogs on the street. I guess that's possible. Yeah.
Yeah.
But it'll be like, me passing someone on the street in New York City and being like, oh, hey, I know you, or I don't know you, but hi.
Hi.
Right. So yeah.
That's exciting.
Yeah. So that's the news over on this end of New York City. Yeah. So, and we were feeding him the wrong dog food, which is just fantastic.
I'm sure he's fine. He's survived for 2 weeks.
He has survived. Yeah, no, the not that the dog food was bad. It's just we got recommended a different type of food. So
I'm sure it's enough sustenance either way.
Yeah. So. No, we did not cause irrevocable damage to our dogs. So
he's
all is well.
Wonderful.
So that's what's going on here. Any news on the matchmaking front?
Yes. So I followed up this week, and so I'm guaranteed 2 per month, right?
Yeah.
And it's actually already approaching the 1 month mark. I think we're a week away.
Yeah.
And honestly, it took a while to set up, do the intaking, the survey, the interview, and such. And I mentioned last week how they did offer a match, but it didn't work out. So I reached out this week because I haven't heard since then. And the matchmaker said that they're getting a lot of passes. So we'll probably have to just carry over into next month, which is fine.
Okay.
So no update there. So it is what it is.
Yeah. I mean, better to get rid of the passes now, and
Yeah, he did say that they're going to redouble their efforts, and I was like, all right, whatever, because then it's just going to continue building. But yeah, I probably don't anticipate any follow-ups until next week at this point, I would say.
Yeah.
So we'll see.
They're gonna not charge you for a month?
No, I'm still charged. It's just the number of guaranteed matches carries over. So for next month, I'll have 4.
Okay. I see. Interesting.
It's not like a use it or lose it situation. It's
right. No, it's interesting. Like if, I just think it's interesting if you don't fulfill something, I mean, I understand, I guess carrying it over is one way, but another way would be like, oh, you know what? We didn't match you this month. Your $2.99 is covered for the next month. Like,
yeah, that's just, I can understand that too. That would be a little bit hard from a business model standpoint if you
Yeah, but I think to be fair, I think it makes them accountable for the work that they're doing. I'm not saying that they're not doing the work, but I'm saying like it puts a little bit of fire under their feet.
He did say that I'm going to get a report at the end of the month. So I think that will essentially break down in more detail how many people they've reached out to, et cetera, et cetera. So we'll see.
Okay. All right. Yeah. Well, cool. Well,
yeah.
So
nothing yet, but we'll see.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Good.
Cool. So yeah, so we have a lot to talk about today. So why don't we first start with what have you been Star Trekking?
And you people, you're all astronauts on some kind of Star Trek.
Or what have we been Star Trekking, rather?
Yeah. So I think the only thing that I have Star Trekked recently, other than obviously Lower Decks, is I watched the Descent season finale and season opener for.
Why did you watch that again?
So our sister podcast, Rewind, on the Trek Geeks Podcast Network, has covered these two stories over the last couple of their episodes. So
I see.
And they do a funny take. They kind of like take the story and rewrite it in a different, just in a funny way. I love the way that Sarah and Haley do that. So so I watched Descents Part 1 and 2, and so yeah, it's just I forgot.
It's okay. It's an okay two-parter.
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean,
it's not amazing. I already agree. It's a decent cliffhanger because you really don't know what's going on. You don't even really see Hugh until the second part of the episode.
Mm-hmm.
So
right.
There's that. It's kind of an interesting thing with Lore. So it's also, I didn't realize this is the last time we saw Lore.
Oh yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so I didn't realize that. So so there's that piece. So I know he's deactivated and we never really find out what happens to him, do we?
No.
So even in Picard,
no, not in canon anyway.
Yeah, so I'm interested to see. There was actually a news story today, I think, speaking of Star Trek news, that I guess Brent Spiner had not really, like, he's in season 2 of Picard, but he hasn't really said too much about what his character is in season 2. So
right.
There is some speculation around that, and I think
that's Lore. That's what I guess about season 1 too.
Yeah, I actually really thought that Lore was the big baddie from season 1, and I think that would have been really interesting. I can see why they didn't. I mean, we had to meet them all on this planet. They aren't evil per se, but they're definitely, threatened, and so I don't think the character of Lore really fits into that. But I early on in watching Picard season 1, I was thinking, where does Lore kind of fit in? Or I'd forgotten that they had deactivated him, but we'd never.
I'm not holding my breath.
Yeah. But that would be interesting, right? Or maybe he's coming back as Data in this alternate timeline that Q is creating. So who knows? But
didn't Brent Spiner say that he didn't want to play Data again?
Yeah, he did. Yeah, I mean, I think maybe he could be playing Lore in this alternate universe, and that would be interesting.
Maybe.
So I mean,
maybe another long lost relative.
Yeah, maybe he's playing Noonien,
Dr. Sung.
Dr. Sung, yeah. So yeah, who knows? But so there's that. So Descent is a fine tale. I really do like the bridge aspect of it. From Beverly running the ship.
Yes, that part was cool.
And the kind of interaction.
We finally got a chance to actually command the ship.
Yeah, and to interact with the lower decks people that were
Or the
kind of
skeleton
posted
crew.
there. Yeah, the skeleton crew. So I thought that was, that was a nice part of the story. So yeah, so that's primarily what I have Star Trek recently. What
Cool.
about you? What have you been watching?
So it's funny because one of my coworkers wanted to start a Star Trek, like a TOS kind of like viewing schedule of some sort. She wanted to kind of just talk about Star Trek on occasion. So I was like, sure. And then I was like, why don't we start with The Cage? And I was like, oh, it's like the original pilot of TOS. And she's like, okay. And yeah, it's actually hard to find The Cage. It's only available, at least based upon me searching for a few minutes, on Paramount Plus. Hulu has, so it's off Netflix. TOS is off Netflix. It's still on Hulu, but Hulu doesn't have The Cage.
Oh, interesting.
Only Paramount Plus has The Cage. I mean, it might be available for purchase on like Amazon Prime or things like that, or you can rent it on Google or YouTube or whatever. But yeah, for streaming, just regular streaming, it was only available on Paramount Plus. I was like, oh, that's kind of annoying. So she actually didn't watch it because she couldn't find it. And I was like, I felt bad. I was like, oh, should I start with The Man Trap then? But I went ahead and did my homework and I watched The Cage, and I was just reminded of how much I didn't like it. Like that's basically what it boiled down to. It is just I mean, some of it is okay, like the Telosians are fine, but like honestly, it is very, very, very dated. Is the whole concept of like having trapping Captain Pike and then giving him options of women to choose from to basically procreate on this planet. And not only that, like him having multiple comments about how he feels odd that there are women on the bridge. It's just like it's yeah, it is just very, very dated in that respect, and it was really hard to watch. And I just couldn't get past it. I like the whole concept of him with Dina, and then Dina literally throwing herself at him, and she literally is just like a damsel in distress, like the whole episode. It's so bad. I'm like, I have so many issues with it. But this is the problem. The thing is, like, Gene Roddenberry, I think, like, was kind of like, he's a visionary in many respects, but there have been many conversations about his view on women, and even in like the TNG era, how a lot of that machismo carried over into how women were seen and viewed, even in this futuristic, idyllic universe. And it's a problem. It's an issue. So I'm glad we're getting shows like Stranger Worlds, where hopefully we'll have a lot more strong women in that era. We're giving Uhura an actual story, like she's actually a real person versus just like a token black female on the bridge, which honestly what she was distilled down to in the original series. Like it's just like I had a hard time watching it, like, and I rewatching it made me dislike TOS even more. So yeah. Anyway, so obviously I have very strong feelings about it, but I swallowed my distaste and watched the whole episode, and I was like, all right, well, that's over now. So
I forgot. I actually watched and we talked. I don't remember if we talked about this last week. I watched the penultimate episode of TOS.
Oh yes, you mentioned that.
All our yesterdays, which was there was definitely a little bit about Mariette Hartley being in it and how scantily clad she was, or not but
I mean, yeah. Let's be honest.
The original series,
other than DS9, the TOS, TNG, Enterprise, and Voyager, obviously DS9 and Voyager. Well, you can even argue Voyager had many issues with 7. Like, like, oh my God. Like,
Yeah.
I think actually DS9 is like the only one where I'm like, okay, we actually have like strong, smart women that, were not objectified for the most part and actually stood their ground against the men that they were surrounded by.
I mean,
like,
Janeway does that in Voyager, but she's
yeah, but then we got
only
7.
No, yeah, absolutely. No, I'm not. No, I'm.
Anyway, yes, but then of course we they needed the female sex object. So, so yeah.
I mean, it's a product of the male-dominated, boardroom,
the industry,
industry, yeah. So it's definitely something that's changed, and thankfully so, obviously. But yeah,
it took a long time.
Yeah, it did. Yeah, it did, and it's kind of unfortunate. But.
It is unfortunate, but yes. So, did watch that, and we will see. So my coworker, she did not. I don't think she watched The Man Trap. I'm like reluctant to push it because there are some scenes in The Man Trap too, from what I recall, where it was also very like, oh my God. Like, I think there were a couple of scenes from what I recall where there were like women just serving men food or something like that. On the bridge or whatever. It made me cringe. I was just like, so I'm not pushing it hard. This viewing party we have going on, but we'll see.
What was the impetus to do the original series?
So she found out that I have a Star Trek podcast, and we have a good working relationship. And I think we just talked about Star Trek, and then I made a mention. She's not a big Star Trek fan at all, but I made a mention that I haven't really done a full series watch through of TOS. And so she was like, oh, we should do it together. I'm like, okay, sure. But then watching The Cage reminded me as to why I haven't done a full series watch through of TOS. So
yeah.
Anyway, I will get off my soapbox. I will gently step off. I know you had a couple other pieces of Star Trek news that you want to talk about, right?
Well, I do. So speaking of the original series, I got a review copy of the original series on Blu-ray Steelbook.
Wonderful.
So, I was, and as I told you before we started recording, the accompanying documentation talks more about the films that are coming out on 4K, and so
I've never heard much more about, like
the remastering of
the remastering,
which I'm actually really excited to rewatch the remastered version of the motion
picture.
Will
it be less boring?
I mean, well, and we'll talk about.
It'd be nice to look at, but
yeah, I think that's obviously a 9-minute starship porn shot of the new Enterprise is certainly going to be maybe a little bit more exciting in 4K. I don't know, but it was a little confusing because I was looking at the steelbooks of the original series, and I was like, but the PR stuff talks about the movies, and I'm like, these aren't the movies, and so
it's a little confusing. Yes.
But as I read on, it does talk about the original series also being in a limited edition Blu-ray steelbook. So and this is a nice set. So I for those people who collect DVD / Blu-ray media and want to see the original series in that context, I think this is a really beautifully packaged set with a lot of great features, and I would definitely recommend checking it out. And thanks to CBS for sending us a review copy of this. I think that they're beautiful, and I think we're gonna figure out a way to give this away at some point in the future. So
you too can watch Toxic Male Masculinity in HD. Just kidding. Am I?
I mean, I don't. Yes, it's. Is it toxic? I mean,
it's this it's
excessive.
Systemic.
Yeah,
male,
so I think that's
toxic
about it.
masculinity
Yeah.
that is just there. It doesn't even need to be spoken about. It's just there.
That's-
It's systemic, which is, I don't know if that's better or worse, but whatever.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's hard to look back.
All right, I'm putting this on my soapbox. It's fine. It's fine. It's not
But
there anymore. I don't see it.
definitely go and check it out. I think this is a beautiful set of discs, and definitely worth your investment if you're into media.
Yes, into discs.
And
And
having
Blu-rays.
the collection, whether you have an internet connection or not. So
Correct.
there you go. I imagine that The Cage is on here probably. So
I'm sure it is.
if you had this copy, you could have watched The Cage.
I could have watched it in even
This
higher
way.
definition.
So there's that. What else is going on in the Star Trek world? I mean, so we're going to talk a little bit later about Coda, but book 2 of Coda is coming out next week.
Like in a week, yeah.
Yeah, so
And Prodigy's coming. There's a lot going on. Prodigy's coming next
Prodigy's-
week.
yeah.
I've heard some. Obviously, the reviews have still been embargoed, but I've heard some good initial reactions. I've heard things like you won't be disappointed.
Yeah.
So I'm excited for Prodigy, and it's always nice to get like a fresh start with a new show and see where it goes. It's like a new adventure.
Yeah,
So-
and I hear that the opening episode's an hour-long episode.
Well, it's actually 2. They're just playing 2 episodes, I think.
Oh, okay.
It's not really. Like
So that's
full hour.
so next week's a busy Star Trek week. We've got Prodigy and we've got Coda Book 2 coming out. So
a lot going on. A lot going
there's
on.
that, and then we
Yeah.
are less than a month away from Discovery season 4.
Yeah, I got the 1 month countdown social media card on, I think, Star Trek Plus or something
Yeah.
on Instagram.
So in other news, I just want to shout out Wilson Cruz, who was recently awarded a Make a Difference award from the Matthew Shepard Foundation.
Mhm.
And if you go to his Instagram, you can hear his acceptance speech and talk about how the story of Matthew Shepard impacted his life. And so the Matthew Shepard Foundation. So for those of you who don't know, Matthew Shepard was a 21-year-old young man in 1998 who was basically attacked and tied to a fence outside of a town called Laramie, Wyoming, and he was left to die there. And he actually did die 5 days later in a hospital. And so his parents set up this foundation to honor him, his life, and his aspirations, but also to help people, organizations, communities just really embrace the dignity and the equality of everyone. So it's a great honor. This story definitely, I was aware of this story, and this was long before I came out. So I was definitely aware of this. And so they honored Wilson for his, I believe, for his activism and his outspokenness, and also for his work to help bring about change and fight for equality and dignity for everyone. So
no, it's awesome.
So
Very cool.
Huge shout out to him. Definitely go to his Instagram and check out his acceptance speech. I think it's an amazing. It's like 7 minutes long, and
that's so long.
it's not that long.
7 minutes.
But it's well worth it. He's Wilson is such a powerful speaker and just a heartfelt individual that and he's I love he calls people out, not in this video obviously, but he's an activist, and he speaks out, and it's really inspiring, I think, to listen to the things that he says. So if you follow him on Instagram, you see some of his live stories. He gets a little feisty about things, which I love. And so huge shout out to Wilson for that honor. And And if you're listening, we would love to have you on our podcast someday. You
Way to
you
plug.
literally live 2 miles from us? 3
Oh my
miles.
God.
You're across. I mean, we're on the west side of New York City in Midtown, and you are just across the East River in Long Island City.
Oh my
like
God.
halfway across, right? I don't know how Long Island City works. Is it?
It's basically just it's by the water. I think he's by the water.
Yeah. So yeah.
He's not that far from us at all.
Let's do lunch, Wilson. You know.
Oh,
yeah. Let's do a live recording in person of the podcast with Wilson Cruz and Anthony Rapp. If you're listening too, you know, you're in the city. We'd love to interview you too. So anyway,
nice plug. Good job.
You know,
selling our podcast.
I mean, you know, just putting in a little effort, but it would be great to meet them. So hopefully Anthony's going to Mission Chicago, so we will make it a priority to connect with him.
Say hello
and connect with him and invite him on the podcast then, if he doesn't come on before then. But yeah, so there we go.
Cool.
But Discovery is less than a month away, so I'm excited about that as well.
Very excited. Well, let me temper my excitement and say I am moderately excited. Yes.
I think we talked about that when we watched the
trailer.
The trailer, yes. So anyway, that's what we did in Star Trek this week, ish.
Cool. Yeah. Well, why don't we move on to the finale of Lower Decks season 2, First Contact.
Citation ops, but don't these guys do navigation? Wait, what are we?
Hey, Kimolo! Matt, heads up! I would love to, but there's no time. There's a busted hull panel we need to release manually. Tendi and I can override the safety protocols, but one of you guys has to swim down and release the mag clamps.
The what? But the panel's outside.
Yeah, but the control node for the manual access clamps are down there.
Can't these two do it?
Yeah, it wasn't designed for flippers.
Okay, all right, sorry. Once again, Beckett Mariner saves the day. Of course, my frickin' mom will get all the praise.
Oh, shut up! You're just mad because you don't want her to leave.
So what if I am, okay? This is the most I've gotten along with her in years, and now she decides to take off. That's messed up. And I kinda already told her I never want to work with her again.
The captain needs our support, especially from you. Look, however this rescue goes, either we're gonna be dead or she's gonna be on a new ship. Is this really how you want to leave things with her?
Of course not, but I can't patch things up now. I have to swim down and unclamp a thingy.
No, you don't. Boimler's got this.
You guys don't understand my family.
We are your family! We will always be there for you, and right now we're heading into a pile of crazy, dangerous space debris!
Whoa, Tendi,
I don't know. Just trust us. We can do this. Go to the bridge, apologize, and make sure your mom doesn't get us all killed!
You guys are right. You got this, Boims?
Yes, go!
Thanks, okay, sorry.
So, Mike, what did you think of this episode? What did you think about the season finale?
I loved the season finale. I thought it was a great all-around episode. There were so many pieces of this story that I really loved, from the animated ship porn that we got.
Yeah.
The Archimedes was gorgeous. I do really like the Excelsior class, but this thing looks amazing. They did a great job with it, and they did some real huge callbacks to a lot of the movies in this. So it was just really, really cool. I really enjoyed it. I obviously just rewatched it again before we recorded.
So did I. Yeah.
But I would watch it again and again. I mean, I thought that this might have been the best Lower Decks episode of their 20 episode run, I think.
It was really good. And I agree with you. The Archimedes was good. I liked, obviously, the new ship design, but I loved what they did with the Cerritos and just removing the outer hull. I don't think we've never seen that before. That's legit the first time that we've seen anything like that. Like, we've seen like a couple instances where there's maybe a piece of the outer hull that's missing, like on Enterprise or something when they had to remove a piece of outer hull to remove that Romulan mine or something. But this was literally the entire ship was like naked, and we saw the entire inner hull.
Well, this is a callback to First Contact too. I mean,
yes, the magnetic interlocks or something.
Yes,
or whatever you call it.
Had to do that throughout the entire ship and remove all of the.
And that was just the main deflector dish. This was obviously
everything.
Everything. And I love that whole scene. And once we actually saw the Cerritos without the outer hull, it was so cool. Like we just never seen that before.
Yeah,
and
no, we haven't. It was
very unique. It was very interesting. It's something very different, than what's come before. So I really like their whole solution to this issue that they ran into. They kind of scienced their way out of it, and I love that.
Yeah, it was a definite. I think this hit every right button that you could possibly hit in an episode. Solving something with science, a huge rescue.
It's only 30 minutes, which is longer than usual. They usually have like 22 minutes, 23 minutes, but this is like 30 minutes.
I mean, they could have gone on. I would have watched this if this were like a 2-hour movie.
It was great, yeah,
so great.
And everyone, it was also very character driven too. Obviously we got a lot of the action and the starship porn, but it was everyone had something to do, which is also
everyone
great.
Had a part,
and everyone worked together, which was also the last
Cerritos
3 episodes.
Cerritos strong.
Yeah, that was one thing I want to talk about. I think this, and I think this is something that's been kind of creeping all season, and I think I didn't really notice it until this episode, but really a much more heightened sense of pride in the crew, because especially when we were first introduced to the Cerritos in season 1, it was kind of like it's like C-list, literally like C-D list, in Starfleet. People other than I think like maybe Tendi, everyone else was Tendi and Rutherford. Everyone else was kind of like looking to like move on, or like not even Captain Freeman had much to say about like the ship. She kind of recognized that it was like very, it was not what was it called? Like, it's not like a capital ship, it's
right. Yeah. It's a workhorse. Does second contact. It does the duty that other ships don't do.
Yeah, but I think that this season we've gotten a lot of snippets of this, and I think that they did a great job of actually evolving the sense of camaraderie in the crew, and then also just general sense of like, yes, we're not like the best, but we still know, like we still hold pride in what we do, and we still know our shit, and everything really came to a head in this episode where, everyone was really working together, collaborating, like, working as like one crew, and everyone was really proud to be part of the crew. I really like that. Like, I thought that was really great. And we've seen, like, this also was reflected in, Captain Freeman, where she was offered this promotion, and by the end, she was ready to say no to that, because she had a sense of belonging, and I really like that. I don't know if you have any additional thoughts on that, but
no, I thought that her decision to do that was great. I mean, the whole cast was there. When we were talking about the California class ships, I laughed out loud at Billups swearing about.
That was a good
they had
thing.
to bleep out all the F.
Yeah, everyone was like talking over each other and very emotional.
Yeah, it was. He was very passionate about his ship, and as the chief engineer, and so it was that was hilarious, and I also like that scene where they're all in the briefing room and yelling at Freeman, and Mariner's just sitting there watching it, like all it The only thing that could have made that scene better is if she just sat there with popcorn and watched it.
Yeah.
That would have been hilarious. So yeah, there's that. There's, Tendi being deleted from the medical staff and thinking that she was leaving the Cerritos when, Dr. Tana was basically promoting her to chief science officer training. And
then she was like Jadzia
Dax. I know.
And then Tana was like, what the fuck is that?
Yeah.
What the fuck is Jadzia Dax? Which is, I think, really funny and self-deprecating, where it's like, all right, yeah, no one gets these references. Like,
but then she did say no, more like Spock,
which makes much more sense.
Yeah,
who doesn't know Spock?
Yeah, exactly. So I thought that was great. That was a nice turnaround with that. You didn't really know that until the end of the episode what was going on with Tendi. So we still have no idea. After rewatching it again, obviously the whales saved Boimler somehow, but you don't see them coming as his vision is blurring as he's stuck in that part of the tunnel, and then also I didn't catch it. I didn't see how he ripped his suit either. So
yeah, that part wasn't clear to me. I think he was just kind of like struggling with the magnetic interlock or whatever,
and it just ripped. Yeah.
That's fragile.
Yeah, right. It should not be. And then everyone else is in their masks, in their full uniforms. Ransom was again another callback to the Abrams verse, right? Of what was it? It was Into Darkness, right? Where
was it Into Darkness?
Kirk is piloting himself through space towards the Vengeance, and his shield cracks, but he has.
I thought you were talking about the joystick, which I think we saw. Was that in Insurrection? We saw that.
That was in the joystick is from Insurrection, but the visor thing is from Into Darkness,
where you see kind of an overlay.
And the path that you're trying to get to, and all of the rocks that you're trying to get through, which is what he was trying to do in Into Darkness. And so there's that callback. I am also of them. I didn't get why they couldn't. I agree. Why couldn't you like warp out of the system, come in from a different trajectory?
Yeah, that part wasn't clear to me. I only imagined that it was if the debris kind of was orbiting the planet and kind of like just it was like all over the place and it wasn't just in one direction. Though from the visuals you saw, it was mostly like in like one area. But if it kind of, because I think so there was a mention like, oh, it was like orbiting the planet or something.
Right, you couldn't get any on the planet.
A little more difficult.
Yeah, you couldn't get any on the planet, and so that was. But I felt bad for Kayshawn, right? Who comes up with that, and I was like, "That's a great idea!" Like, and everybody was like, he like screamed at him, like, "What are you thinking?" Like, I didn't quite.
He was like, "It's just an idea."
Yeah, right. So yeah, it was just such a great. Like, I am. Yeah, I thought.
Yeah, no, I think everyone's firing all cylinders. And yeah, everyone had, I think, that hero moment. I think obviously Mariner had all the stuff to work out, and it's honestly been, I think, in the works all season. But her abandonment issues, her tendency to push people away. So we saw that in this episode, and
her mom tries to convince her of that, and then she fights with her and says,
"Right, and
you're always trying to change me." And I mean, it's which is a valid point from Mariner's perspective, but it's not really a change. It's just like it's growing. It's not really changing.
Right. I mean, she's like immature. Like she needs to grow up.
Yeah.
And I'm glad that Tendi, Rutherford, and Boimler, when they were in Cetacean Ops, were kind of just like, you got to get over it and just pass
we're your family. I thought that was another really cool moment.
That was a great moment, and I think it was a hero moment for everyone to kind of convince Mariner to just get over it and grow up a little bit and go figure things out with her mom. You know, I thought that was great.
Yeah, the only silly part about this episode that, you know, I really could have done without is the whole Captain Freeman Day bit. And Boimler.
Sure, that was just thrown for laughs.
Yeah, you know, just from Boimler's perspective about how he's trying to shout and get Captain Freeman's attention that he did the decorations, which, you know, is a clear callback to obviously Captain Picard Day, but you know, that's the only piece of this episode which I was like, you know, why is this ensign still trying to kiss the captain's butt and doing this?
Yeah.
But also Rutherford deleted all of his redundant memories. And
that kind of reminded me, I don't know if it when I was watching that, it reminded me of on Discovery, remember Ariam?
Yeah.
She was like, she had to like back up her memories and stuff like that. It kind of reminded me a little bit about that. Like, she's also a fellow cyborg or something.
Right, yeah. And obviously Rutherford is a newer model per se, so
yeah. But I thought that was kind of a interesting narrative angle where it's about like these like memories that need to be backed up and how that kind of plays into the character development of it all. But then we got like this scene where it's like, oh, was this forced on him? You know,
right, and by whom? You know, obviously there's some Section 31 possibilities here, but yeah, I thought that was really interesting. So I'm excited to see what they do with Rutherford's character in the next season. We also get, you know, a couple of scenes with Jennifer, the Andorian.
That's right, Jennifer.
So, and you know, there's a little bit of a vibe between Mariner and Jennifer. I mean, I thought that. I thought that there was a little bit of a, you know.
I feel you always see that. Like you mentioned last time between Rutherford and Billups. I don't know. It's okay.
I think
it's okay for there to be platonic relationships between people.
Yeah, I mean, but I think, you know, anything's possible, and I think that, you know.
I mean, we do know Mariner is pansexual. Like,
right.
you know,
yes.
she's. It doesn't really matter. You know, the sex and anything like that. I did not sense that. I think
I totally felt that. So yeah, so there was that. And what else from this episode? So we haven't even talked about the cliffhanger, right? Which we got to the point where she was going to refuse, and then she finds out that Pakled planet is blown up, and you know, I actually think that this is a really good cliffhanger, and I think to myself, gosh, what if they had never been offered a third season? What would have changed? Would this scene have even existed? But what a great way to do that, and to pull up the images of her meeting with the Pakleds and her being in the orbit of Pakled planet or whatever, of the Pakled planet, and then somehow being tied to the bomb that we know the Klingons gave to the Pakled.
Yeah, I wonder if it's like some sort of conspiracy or if it's just like, you know, just someone inept not doing a good job. I don't know.
Yeah, I was also thinking, what if this is sort of like a way to do sort of a surreptitious way of sending her in to figure out this problem, like they
interesting.
Send a debunked captain in to kind of find out what really happened or what's really going on and who's really at the center of this, which we sort of know that the Klingons did this, but
I'll be honest, I don't need the Pakleds to be drawn out further because I feel like we got enough of them this season. They're not really doing it for me as like the big bad for the show, so I can do without it, but we'll see what happens.
Yeah, I mean, and the one thing that we haven't really seen other than the lower decks of the Borg cube, but is the real possibility that the Borg are out there and somehow manipulating this, or
this would not be their way at all.
No, but I'm thinking of other big bads that would be interesting to kind of explore in this time frame.
I suppose. I could if they moved on from the Pakleds, I would be totally fine.
Yeah, no, I think I'm kind of But also we have to remember that this is a comedy versus a drama. So
Right.
what other?
Though this episode, I would have to say was, I mean, there were some like LOL moments, but it wasn't like that funny. You know, it was definitely more like, it was definitely more character action driven. There were, again, some like, especially Cetacean Ops, there were some moments thrown in there just to be funny, but overall it wasn't, you know, it wasn't super funny, which I think is fine. You know, I think it doesn't need to be. I think that the great thing about Lower Decks is that it offers a lot of variety, and it could be funny, it could be silly, but it can also give us a really action-packed episode like this and wouldn't miss a beat, you know?
Yeah, I agree. Yeah. But I thought it was a really, really powerful, like definitely so many different directions to go in with the season 3 opener. How this is obviously the crew wants to do something. They actually can't go anywhere because they don't have a hull, so they can't go to warp. They can't sort of follow her per se. So,
but I'm sure the crew is gonna like band together and
and want to do something. So there is that piece of it. So I think that's that'll be.
Yeah, I wonder if we're gonna get like substitute captain, and then we get us like a chain of command situation or something like that.
I mean, we could, that's right up Mike McMahon's alley. So we could definitely see that. I could see that happening. Yeah, I mean, there's so many possibilities, but I do think this is a pretty big cliffhanger. I would have to say that since we did talk about Descent earlier, I think that this is almost a bigger cliffhanger than Descent. I mean, I think that this is a great cliffhanger for season 2. Not to the level of the best of both worlds, but
that'd be hard to live up to.
But also remember that we probably have a good 10 months until we see the resolution of this. So we have a ways to wait, and with no knowledge of what's going to happen. So so this is going to be it's a great episode, and it's obviously going to is totally rewatchable multiple times, but it's going to be a while before we see the outcome of this. And also, we didn't even talk about it, Sonia Gomez.
I was just about to say the exact same thing. I was like, we haven't even talked about Sonia Gomez yet.
From Next Generation, Q-Who episode.
And then I think she was on one other episode or something.
Probably, yes. I can't think of which one now.
Yeah, I thought Sonia Gomez is fine,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Great to see her captaining a beautiful starship like the Archimedes, and
I have very little to say about Sonia Gomez. I mean, like, she was obviously just like, like another. I mean, Sonia Gomez, let's be honest, is kind of like a deep cut. It's like if you haven't watched these 2 specific episodes, particularly Q-Who, or don't remember because it's been like 30 years. I mean,
but it's a nice callback.
You'd be hard pressed to be like. I mean, when you told me Sonia Gomez is going to be on, it took me a second. And I don't know where I pulled it from. I was like, Sonia Gomez from Q-Who? I was like, I haven't seen Q-Who in like God knows how long. So it was.
Well, I mean, she was a part of the Starfleet Corps of Engineers ebook series. So she was kind of a main character in that. So I mean, I knew that the minute someone said Sonia Gomez, I knew exactly who it was, where she came from, like what episode.
Not all of us have read all the Star Trek novels, Mike.
No, I haven't read them all either, but I did read that series pretty seriously for a long time. But anyway, yes, so I think that was a big callback. And again, it's a callback from the Lower Decks. Again, it's another callback to Lower Decks. So that's what I thought was also really cool. But some cool scenes with her in it. Obviously, I thought that the ensign tripping was a little weak
forced.
Yeah, that was a little forced, but
the ensign tripping, and then Sonia being like, "I've done worse in front of more intimidating captains." I was like, "Well, that's stiff." Like, it was also just kind of like the whole setup of it was kind of just like, Wink, wink. Nudge, nudge. Hope you know what we're talking about. I'm like, okay, all right, I understand. It was very, and it wasn't. Some people have criticized the actress of whose name I do not know, and I thought she was fine. I did not think this particular scene was her fault. I thought it was just like overall a little awkward.
Yeah, I mean, it's Leisha Naff, and I think I'm saying her name right, but yeah. So that's who plays Sonia Gomez.
I don't know.
And also voiced it. So great callback though, I thought, and another nice piece to this episode.
Yeah, totally. Cool. So I think that does it for the finale of Lower Decks season 2. So Mike, next week we're going to talk about the season as a whole, just give some more high level thoughts and kind of wrap things up as we have our 1 week break before Prodigy. Though technically, yes, we're a week behind. So Prodigy comes out next week, but we'll be reviewing it the week after. So yes.
Right. Yeah.
Yes.
I mean, it does sort of take away us having to do spoiler alerts and things like that. Right. So in that sense, but right, it also gives us the turnaround time because the episodes come out on Thursday, and Thursday is when I edit this podcast, so it doesn't really work out. So it would mean a long, and also we get a week to kind of listen to other people talk about it. We get to do a little research on any little parts of it that we don't understand or want to explore more before we talk about it. So,
but we still bring our original thoughts to it, which is not.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Like, no,
obviously parroting what other people have to say about it. Hopefully,
no, not at all. I don't actually. Yeah, no. But I love this episode, so I'm, and I think it'll be great to talk about the whole season.
Yeah, cool.
So we'll do that next week.
All right. So, Mike, I know that we also want to spend a little bit of time talking about Coda, about Star Trek Coda, Book 1, Moments of Asunder.
Yeah. Right.
So this is going to be a full spoiler cast. Like, it's going to be a full deep dive into Book 1. So spoiler warning for our listeners. If you haven't read Coda for Book 1, just stop listening.
Yeah, just stop listening. Skip ahead to the end if you want to hear our
if you want to listen to our fan sets call out. Skip to the last 3 minutes, but otherwise we won't be hurt if you decide to stop listening at this point. And
if you haven't read it and want
to read it
and want to read it
and want to read it, and we'll just see you next time. Otherwise, for those that are listening, I want to hear what we have to say about Book 1 of this lit verse wrap up. We're going to talk about it right now.
Yeah. I just read a little bit of a review that kind of calls this the Avengers Endgame of the Trek Litterverse.
The Litterverse, that's right.
Yeah. Or not, they have another name for it too. But anyway, novel verse, or I don't know. Anyway. But
yeah, so to preface it, we talked about this a week or two ago, but you and I, we've definitely read plenty of Star Trek books as we were growing up, especially the pocket books, the pocket novels, whatever, things like that. And the overarching story or behind the scenes of this whole literary these novels, this Litterverse, whatever, was basically post Nemesis having this multi-year gap in canon, right? Yes. So basically these authors were able to do whatever the shit they wanted because they basically got this entire level of freedom because they didn't have to abide by quote unquote canon anymore. And they didn't have to worry about another new series. There was Enterprise, but honestly, that was a prequel, so it doesn't matter. They didn't have to worry about new series, new movies, because there just wasn't that on the horizon, right? There, like, people didn't know when Star Trek was going to come back, if at all. Like, you know, we got the JJ movies, but those were set in an alternate timeline. So there's really nothing stopping these authors from doing whatever they wanted. And
we've shared our thoughts on the Destiny trilogy, which is probably the biggest storyline that brought a lot of the different stories, a few of the different stories together. For that, that's probably the biggest comparison. I mean, they've done other really long series like The Fall and others that they've kind of broken out and done this. But yeah, I mean, for the most part, I've only sporadically read a few novels here and there towards the end of this Litterverse run after Destiny. So, you know, so there are definitely some gaps in here. And I think that, you know, you and I talked, we were a little worried about our gap in knowledge and understanding of what the Litterverse was actually like at this point in the story.
Yeah, because you've probably read more than I have, because I only read Destiny, and I think that was it. Maybe one other book or something, but even more limited.
Yeah, and, you know, and so that was your worry going into it. So I listened to it first, and then I said, no, I think you can go ahead and read it, and you picked it up after I finished it. But and I'll assure our audience that even if you haven't really if you've read a few novels here or there, Dayton Ward, and honestly, like I am a huge fan of Dayton Ward. He's been a Star Trek writer since the Strange New Worlds. He won the first contest for the Strange New Worlds writing short story contest that Star Trek ran for a number of years. So he does a great job of, one, there's this whole intro of all the things that have, like, the big overriding things that have happened, right?
Like definitely the TLDR version of it.
Yeah, you know? So you get that to begin with, which is super helpful. And then when you get into more nuanced or story pieces that
they kind of like weave in a recap.
Yeah, they you know, he does a great job of telling you the stuff that you need to know to keep going in the story. And so that
was definitely helpful, because there are definitely characters that I did not know at all. We definitely have some new characters that basically we've never known and will never know again because they're dead. And I was just like, who's this? Oh, they're dead. Oh, wow. Dude.
Yeah, you know, speaking of so this is also where the Avengers kind of ties into this story. I'm not a huge, the one thing I'm not a huge fan of is how people kind of dissolve into nothingness.
The problem is we don't really get, that's an issue, because we don't get like a death scene. You know, we don't they
get touched by these beings. Yeah, they get touched by these beings, and they essentially dissolve into nothingness.
So before we get into some of the narrow plot points, I guess we can kind of give just kind of an overarching takeaway and thought about this first book. So I mean, just to quickly summarize, but not to get too deep into it, because we can spend probably an hour just summarizing the book. This timeline is essentially facing a crisis, and Wesley Crusher was essentially the hero of the story, more or less.
Who has become a traveler.
So it's traveler version of Wesley Crusher. And we get a few different iterations of him based upon where we are in the novel and where he is in his timeline, his from his perspective. He is basically running into this nemesis who is looking to wreck up time. And one of the biggest first scenes that we get between Wesley and this unknown enemy is on the Guardian planet, where these bad guys destroy the Guardian Forever, which is a big scene. I was like, whoa, the Guardian Forever, that's a big deal. And it's a lot of the book is from his POV, where he's trying to track these beings down, trying to observe what they're doing, trying to figure out what they want, and ultimately meeting up with the post-Nemesis, post all these books, Enterprise E crew, primarily Picard and Beverly Crusher.
And Worf is the first officer.
And Worf, who is now the first officer of the E.
Geordi's still there as the engineer.
And Geordi is still there. Geordi's always down there in engineering, doing his thing. And working with them to figure this all out and trying to figure out who's behind it all, who's trying to wreck time, blow up these timelines, things like that.
There's also the connection between Jean-Luc and Beverly's son Renee and Wesley.
Right. Mm-hmm.
So there's this connection between the two of them, but also through an attack on the Enterprise E of these beings, Renee, who was 6 years old, is now turned into a 19 or 19-year-old in a matter of seconds by simply getting like a tip of a piece of this being touching.
Like brushed, grazed, I guess.
Yeah, grazed. Yeah. And so there's that piece of, this is, Renee is a big part of this story as well. So it's sort of, Wesley, right. Renee, Picard.
There's something like emotional connection there. Yeah, right.
We also have, the Aventine and Captain Dax and her first officer, Sam Bowers, who Sam is a full-on literary character created in this universe. I believe he served on the Enterprise, I want to say. Pretty sure he did.
No, I have no idea.
At some point before Riker was made admiral or captain and then admiral of the Titan. And so we do have a slight touch of the Titan, but not a lot there in another part of the...
Very little of Titan. We get more time on the Aventine. We also spent some time on the Relativity.
Right. We have the Relativity who's observing...
Yes.
Who's observing these events from different time frames.
Right.
And almost the same problem that faced Picard in the season 7 finale, All Good Things, the backwards time loop, right?
There's the Typhon anomaly.
Yeah, and the Typhon anomaly that is sort of backwards in time.
Yeah, something like that. I wasn't very clear. I mean, so at the end, in the middle, right? So basically, yes, there's these beings, these bad guys that are going through all these different, going to all these different timelines, these multiverses, basically destroying them or triggering big events and blowing things up, killing people. And we come to find out in the middle of the book that it's the Davidians. And I was like, okay, interesting. I don't know what your reaction was. I was like, the Davidians from Time's Arrow, really?
Right, yeah.
I was like, and this is like, they're like the OP, overpowered version of the Davidians. It's like a more evolved form of Davidians, whatever, that basically, they, because of their ability to time shift and travel through time, they're able to destroy a Borg sphere without a second thought. They're able to basically blow up entire worlds without any sort of issues, very easy, and all in the name of based upon what we got from Time's Arrow. They're feeding on the consciousnesses of these people that before they're dying, essentially they're feeding.
I forget, did we ever figure out the name of their little minions? So the minions are what Wesley is sort of fighting. He's not fighting the Davidians directly. he's fighting these beings that I'm trying to even think of how to describe them. They're like the way I look at it is like these floating cloaks with dark faces.
They're Dementors, basically. They're basically Dementors from Harry Potter.
Yes, exactly.
And they actually instill fear in people because the Davidians kind of feed on that psychic energy and also those heightened feelings or whatever. So very similar to the Dementors, they also impose a sense of fear on their victims, which I thought was interesting. But no, it's not like they're like they were kind of described as like kind of like mannequin like beings with the consciousness of the Davidians inside them. But it wasn't. They're not the actual. So that's why they're like a quote unquote like a version of the Davidians versus like I don't know versus like the actual Davidians themselves or whatever like that. But I don't know. I was just like I thought that was interesting. It was a very deep cut, and I think that making them the villain is definitely something that is different. But at the same time, I was kind of, I don't know how you felt about it. I was kind of just like let down because they're literally, they're the dinky villains from Time's Arrow, you know? And I was like, so this is going to basically end the multiverse as we know it. You know, they're going to end the multiverse as we know it. That was kind of just like, I don't know. I don't know how you feel about that particular reveal, but to me, it was just like
I was mildly underwhelmed. You know, I enjoyed this overall storyline, and I really wanted to know who these minion beings, the Dementors, as we can call them, were. That's who you know, and they had the Dementors, and then they had a leader, right, that Wesley faced off against. So that was more interesting to me than figuring out this whole Davidian thing. And once we did, I was like, okay, yeah, I mean, all right. That was definitely not the most exciting part of this for me.
Well, I mean, for me, it was definitely like, who's behind it all? I want to know. Yeah. And then once it was revealed, I was like, oh, it's the Davidians. Great.
Yeah. And yeah, it's fine. I mean, it's a story, you know, it's a nice callback to Time's Arrow, right? And then I guess these overpowered beings, as I'm assuming that OP is a gaming term, right?
Yes, I'm pretty sure it's a gaming term. Yeah, okay. It's in the vernacular. But
okay, yes.
But they are OP. They were like ridiculously powerful. I am not convinced at all that Q would not step into something like this. Like you
got to remember that Q is part of the new timeline, right? Or he's going to be in Picard, so they're sort of curtailed by having that knowledge. I'm sure that they had that knowledge in writing this. They may have even come up with a Q-driven storyline to begin with and had to go back to the writing board because they found out that Q is going to be in Picard.
Maybe. I mean, Wesley does mention Q very briefly, but he was just like, oh, they probably just aren't involving themselves. And I was like, I find that to be doubtful.
But also, I think whoever reached out to these authors, and I forget if it was Michelle Paradise or someone else on the Star Trek team, the official team of TV shows, reached out to these authors about this, or however that all took place. I think that they probably had an idea already that Q is going to be in the second season of Picard.
Maybe.
So that was probably off the table to begin with, which is totally fine. So there is that piece. I'm glad that, honestly, I'm glad that Q's not involved, but I think
I feel like Q was involved, it would we wouldn't get the kind of drama that we're getting.
Yeah, because Q always, if they solve the problem that Q sets out, right, he resets everything essentially or whatever. Yeah. And that's not what this was about. This is actually taking down everything that had been built up. And
right. Which is kind of sad in itself, but, at least they're being given the chance to do it.
Yeah, and so, I intimated a few weeks ago when I first read this that and I didn't, listening to an audiobook is obviously different. I don't get the page numbers and, right. where in the story I'm at. I'm just listening. But the big thing that I had intimated at was the death of Dax. Which was really surprising.
And honestly, I don't think it was written well. It wasn't, but part of the problem is how everyone dies, because once one of these beings or one of their minions touches anyone, they basically disintegrate.
Yeah, exactly. So
there is no chance for a tearful goodbye or some sort of farewell. It's literally, they fade into nothing, so.
Yeah. I mean, it's a great way to make the stakes super high. I mean, the stakes are super high. I mean, I'm that's for sure. So, I felt that, the fade to white or the explosion of white, whatever it was, for the end of Captain Dax was a bit inconclusive until well into the next
chapter.
We
have these other characters, Picard and
Sam Bowers was talking
about it.
So there isn't, this is so imminent that there isn't a lot of time to process. And they do talk about this. One of the characters lost some friends. One of the literary characters lost a bunch of their friends, like Torek, who is from Lower Decks, from the Lower Decks episode, dies in engineering or disappear. I guess dies, right? And so his best friend / former lover /
Elfiki.
Yeah, Elfiki does a little research and trying to figure out what he knew about from the Relativity, I think, right? Wasn't it from the Relativity?
Oh my God. It was a reference in the book. It was like another planet eater or something like that.
Okay. All right. Yeah. So there's that, there isn't that's really the only scene we get of that I can recall of there being some emotional impact for the loss of these lives, right? You don't really get a scene where Sam Bowers is mourning the captain. You don't get any of that. And I'm trying to you probably remember better. I'm trying to remember, other than being generally upset, Picard and Beverly don't even really react. They react some to Renee's acceleration and what his life is going to be like in the future, because it's a 19-year-old body with a 6-year-old mind, and there are ways to kind of bring that together, but or to bring that closer together, not even fully. So there's that piece of it. So there's I would say that this is a much more action-oriented book with very little emotion. And I love Dayton Morton, and this isn't a criticism, but it's it's something I think is missing is some emotional resonance to this.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, as I was reading it, and I feel like we did a hodgepodge job of kind of summarizing everything, but there is a lot going on in this book. It's hard to summarize in 5 minutes.
Yeah, it is.
But I think overall it did feel very cold. I agree with you. I think there are moments where there is some emotion, particularly between Beverly and Picard. But the problem is, since they're essentially in a state of war, there's not much time to kind of process and talk things out. And there are some conversations where, yes, they talk things through. There was some emotion when Beverly and Wesley reunited. There are some moments like that. But for the most part, it's very, very plot heavy and plot driven.
Yeah. Even when older Wesley dies, right? There's not much emotion.
She doesn't even have a chance to process it,
and then the younger version shows up. So,
That's
So,
something. That's something we didn't even touch on. Like we get like a really old Wesley that's like basically 400 years old coming by, and he dies, and and then we get young Wesley Crusher. There was a lot. There was, I think that I mean, a couple of things. If I was to compare this to Destiny, which is obviously the other big epic trilogy that we got post Nemesis, I thought Destiny was excellent. And I thought that it did an amazing job drawing all these different characters and worlds and series together in a way that was very mind-blowing. And the stakes were, for some reason, the stakes in Destiny felt even more visceral to me.
I think there was more character-driven stuff in Destiny. Obviously with the Columbia, right? With the Columbia crew, there was that emotional piece. Obviously, with the Borg being the major baddie of that piece, or one of the major baddies, right? We all have back then when that was written, we had a very visceral reaction to the Borg, and we know, even though we've seen Voyager and we've seen the 8742 species, which is somewhat worse than the Borg to some extent, but we see, we've created the Borg to be this ultimate evil, and so this ultimate evil feels very different than that. And
the thing is, what they're doing, like in terms of kind of snuffing out like alternate timelines, is it's in some ways almost abstract. Like, and when Wesley was kind of, what they kind of break down their master plan, there's like this long exposition at the end where Wesley kind of draws a diagram. Like I can literally see this org chart of like a PowerPoint. Of how the Davidians are basically going to break time. And the thing is, it's much more abstract, like the idea of like how they are stumping out these all timelines, and ultimately that's going to affect the main timeline. And I'm like, okay, like,
Well, I got through that part of it, I sort of got vibes of Daniel's little from Enterprise, little world and his little device that kind of explains everything, right? Or he doesn't explain everything because you have to know what you're looking for, but that, and also when you see Daniel's and oh my gosh, I can see Scott Bakula, but I can't think. Jonathan Archer, there we go.
Okay.
When Daniel's and Jonathan Archer are talking in this weird space where you see all like timelines flowing. That's sort of the impression that I got from what Wesley was trying to show. So that's where my mental picture went for that piece of it.
Okay.
Which I thought helped a little bit, but it's as we talked about, and it's hard. It's not fair really to compare it to Destiny. Destiny was a long time ago, in this Litterverse timeline, but also written a long time ago as well.
Right.
So it's definitely not really fair, and obviously, that's hard to do. It's hard to wrap up 20 years of books,
right?
But yes, the two things that are disappointing for me is that the lack of the emotion in this. And also having this very abstract baddie that is not
right. Now we don't really have any sort of emotional connection to, because they're literally in just one dinky two-parter.
Right. Yeah, exactly. So I mean, there's that. So it's those two pieces. I mean, we have the very familiar characters. We have we have Wesley, which actually for me, this book, one of the highlights was actually Wesley.
Yeah, no, he had a lot to do.
And seeing him journey through this, and also, his connection with Renee and wanting to protect Renee was really important to him as well. So there's that piece of it that I really enjoyed.
Yeah, no, I thought Wesley was good.
So yeah, I was really, I was. Yeah, I'm not going to repeat what I've said. It's been
and it's like it's also the first book. It's setting things up.
This is a setup.
It's a setup. So
so
now
he had
we
a
know
lot of
going in what the stakes are. We understand the stakes. We understand the villain.
Yeah.
And I'm looking forward to drawing in more of the other Star Trek characters because again, most of this was focused on the E. And literally, Ezri was in it for like a hot minute before she was killed off. But, we got a little bit of Worf, but he's having like bad dreams. And that's very open-ended. I was like, oh, okay.
Yep.
Don't know how that connects to everything else. But other than that, it's mostly Picard.
Right. And that's the timeline. That's the piece of Star Trek Literverse that Dayton has been focused on, so that makes the most sense for him to kind of help wrap that piece of it up. Other authors have done the Deep Space Nine novels. Other authors have done the Voyager novels. So, and remind me, I've seen the triptych of the covers, but I don't remember Voyager. I remember Deep Space Nine
on them. There was one ship I didn't recognize. I mean, we have the new DS9. We have, I think, the Defiant, and then there was. The third book has a ship on it.
Maybe it's the Aventine. Maybe it is the Aventine.
Sure. But it wasn't the Voyager.
Yeah. Sure. So there's that piece of it. So we'll kind of see it, and I think we'll be able to, as we read it, early next year, or maybe in December, we can, if we have time, while watching two Star Trek series and talking about that. Plus, the final book comes out in the end of November, so a couple weeks after all of this happens. So, maybe in December we can figure out a way to kind of talk about the whole trilogy wrap up.
Yeah, that'd be great. We should.
But we also and also in December, which I'm kind of excited about, we get a DS9 novel with I think it's Kira and Jadzia, so I'm excited about that.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
So obviously that's during the series, so that's kind of nice.
Okay, cool.
So that's I have no idea. Oh, and then I think we have another Picard novel coming out in January.
Oh, I don't know.
I don't know what's coming out there. Those. I don't know what's next for. And this is another thing that I've made comment before that Star Wars does this better. Star Wars does a little bit better with marketing their books further out than Star Trek does. Still don't understand why you wouldn't apply the lessons of one major universe to another. But anyway, that is part of my Lego rant as well.
Yes.
Now I'm extending it to to the books. But anyway, because also we have new Star Wars books coming out. Anyway, but getting back to this, I think it is. I am hoping that Wesley stays through the next two books as kind of the string that ties us all together. I hope that that's the case, because I don't want to go into each book having to relearn everything that is happening, or like I want the recap from the DS9 universe or whatever is next, but I don't want another whole introduction to this problem. So I'm hoping that we do get the E going to DS9, or that that there's some connection throughout all of this. And obviously we still obviously Renee does not exist in the new timeline, so
no,
that we're aware of. We don't even know what Picard and Crusher's relationship is in the new timeline either. So there's that as well. So there's and there's been no indication that we're going to get that in season 2 of Picard. So there's still a lot of questions, but I think the writing's on the wall for Renee, and it'll be interesting to see what happens with Picard and Crusher.
Yeah.
As well as so I did read a DS9 novel recently, Original Sin, that was on sale on Audible, and that one Ben Sisko is on the Robinson, which is a Galaxy class starship in the Gamma Quadrant. So with Cassidy and his daughter. So there's also that piece that they need to wrap up.
Right. No, there's a lot to wrap up, honestly.
Yeah. So it'll be interesting, but I do hope that Wesley plays a part in this story throughout. And
I think so. I mean, that would make sense, but I guess we'll see.
So we'll find out next week. It comes out Tuesday. And I'm one to download those right away and start listening.
Right.
Even though I've got 3 other books going, or 4 other books going right now.
Oh my god, that's a lot to juggle.
I'm seriously reading like 6 books right now.
Okay.
Not 3 physical and 2 or 3 audio. So yes. So anyway. We'll look forward to book 2 next week, and we'll continue. Yeah. We'll give it another couple of weeks, maybe right before Discovery starts. We'll recap Coda book 2, and then that should work along the timeline somewhat.
Was that a joke?
That was sort of a joke, yes.
All right. Well, good job.
So there we go. Coda is underway and worth the read. You don't need
definitely worth the read.
You don't need to, and like we said, you get caught up if you've hit a few books in the Litverse in the last 5 or 10 years. I think you'll be fine. If you haven't, you will be able to jump on board and enjoy a universal Armageddon, really, of the Litverse of Star Trek.
All over. It's totally over.
So yeah.
Cool. All right. Well, we will definitely chat more when we actually have a chance to read the next book, and we'll take it from there.
Yes.
All right, Mike. Do you want to give a quick shout out to our sponsor?
Absolutely. Fansets is our exclusive sponsor of Deep Space Pride and the Trek Geeks Podcast Network. And speaking of which, we gave away a couple of Voyager DS9 magnetic badges to a couple of winners.
Yes, we did.
Last week. So that was exciting. So that was fun to give away that sort of stuff. And I'm sure we'll be able to do that again. Congratulations to Billy and Desi, who were the winners of those. And I believe that your deltas are on the way to you. So look out for them.
So. They should be.
Yeah, they should be. You probably received them. If you're listening to this now, you probably have received them. So we hope you enjoy those. And there's plenty more on fansets.com. If you have any fandom, I mean, they've got tons of them. They've got DC Comics. They've got The Big Bang Theory. Have you ever watched The Big Bang Theory?
No, I have not watched The Big Bang Theory.
Oh, okay. I actually think you would probably get something out of it, but
maybe.
They have a lot of Halloween. They have the Wizarding World of Harry Potter. So there's a lot of great pins on here. The latest pins for Star Trek are the B'Elanna Torres Women of Trek Series 3 glitter pin.
All right.
We have Captain Admiral Kirk in his red tunic, which we talked about last week.
Yes.
And Gillian Taylor from Star Trek 4 in her uniform at the end of Star Trek 4.
Okay.
So yeah, go to fansets.com, put a bunch of pins into your cart, including some great Lower Decks pins. So they're character pins. They have the badges. They have the Cerritos pin. There is also the Cerritos bar pin as well. So
the what?
The Cerritos bar. So they have a martini.
They're 10 forward.
Yeah, they're 10 forward.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
A pin for that. So definitely go to fansets.com, check out all their pins, put a bunch in your cart, and if you put more than $30, which is actually pretty easy to do, if you're in the US, you'll get free shipping. And if you use the code DS Pride, all in caps, you will get 10% off your order. And we thank Fansets for being our sponsor and the sponsor of the Trek Geeks Podcast Network.
Thanks, Fansets.
Excellent.
All right. Well, that does it for this supersized episode of Deep Space Pride. It's probably time for you to have dinner with Dennis. I don't know if he's been counting you. I already ate dinner because I'm like hashtag early bird special. So
you are.
Yeah,
I
ate dinner at like 6:15.
You are an old man. If you could eat dinner at 4 p.m., you probably would.
I was getting hungry at like 5 today. Yeah. So, in any case, thanks for joining us.
You want to tell our listeners how they can get in touch with us?
Oh yeah, I totally forgot about that. Yes, you can get in touch with us on. I can't speak anymore because it's been an hour and a half. But you can all get in touch with us on the social medias and email. You can reach us on Instagram and Twitter at Deep Space Pride, and you can email us at deepspacepride@gmail.com. Cool. All right. This finally brings this episode to an end. Again, I cannot speak anymore.
And next week we're going to talk about Lower Decks season 2 as a whole.
Season 2 wrap.
And maybe understand, get to know the characters of Prodigy before.
Yes, actually get to know their names
before.
And maybe we can talk a little bit about what we're looking forward to in Prodigy.
Yeah. Sounds good.
All right. Well, thank you, Mike. Thank you, listeners. And we'll talk to you all soon.
Thanks, everybody. Have a great week.
Bye.
Deep Space Pride is a production of Coconut Media Works. Executive producers Bill Smith and Dan Davidson. For more great Star Trek discussion, discover the other shows of the Trek Geeks Podcast Network at trekgeeks.com or find us in Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or your favorite podcast app.
Coconut.